Joey, what are you doing? That's not going to go all the way around. No, it's not going there. Look, let's hear it. You are the first man ever to not get the wheel all the way around. Put his name down in Price is Right history.
For generations, The Price is Right felt like pure daytime comfort. Bright lights, easy laughs, big prizes, and Bob Barker standing at the center like one of the safest men on television. That's exactly why the stories from behind the curtain hit so hard. What looked cheerful from the couch has since been described by former models and staff as a place shaped by fear, humiliation, favoritism, and silence. The picture that emerges is not just, and since everyone has a different line for what ruins a TV legend, drop your take in the comments. Can you still separate a beloved show from ugly behavior behind the scenes? That question hangs over every dark secret tied to The Price is Right. A public smile.
What did you say?
I said I want to kiss you.
My dear, that can be a... Oh, wow! Yes, all right. She had... There's no sense in fooling around with a little peck on the cheek here, Darlene.
Bob Barker spent decades building one of the cleanest images in television. He was witty, neat, reliable, and deeply familiar to millions of viewers. On screen, he projected control and warmth, which made the show feel steady no matter how chaotic the games became. Off-screen, that image has been challenged by former insiders who describe a set where charm at the top did not translate into safety below. Their accounts paint a workplace where intimidation and image management mattered more than fairness. That contrast is what makes the story so unsettling. Several people featured in recent retellings point to a major turning point in Barker's personal life. After the death of his wife, Dorothy Jo, in 1981, people around him said he changed. Producer Barbara Hunter claimed he fell into a severe emotional spiral and even spoke of wanting to take his own life. Others who worked with him say the grief period eventually gave way to something colder and more self-centered. Holly Hallstrom described a man who seemed newly aware of his power and less restrained than before. In her telling, the loss did not just wound him, it changed the atmosphere around everyone else. The set rules. Claims from former models is that the culture on set treated women as scenery first and employees second. The models were central to the look of the show, but they say that also made them targets for constant scrutiny. Hallstrom described an almost absurd attempt to solve the problem. According to her, CBS introduced a so-called 10-second rule, limiting how long male staff could stare at the models and female employees. The idea sounds ridiculous now, and she said it was ridiculous then. Her point was not just that men stared, it was that management handled a serious complaint like a joke. Instead of changing the culture, the rules seemed designed to calm people down long enough to avoid real accountability. The allegations went beyond staring. Barbara Hunter said a male staffer once groped her breasts while she worked there. Kathleen Bradley recalled crew members rubbing against models even after complaints had been made. In that environment, women were left to improvise their own protection because the official channels didn't seem to work. Race and power.
Now wait a minute. You can't trade. You get back over there. Where you were over there, Danielle. Emma, you just got here and already have everything screwed up down there.
The darker accounts were not limited to sexism. Former models also described racism as part of the everyday structure of the show. Kathleen Bradley, the first full-time black model among Bob's Beauties, said the hostility was not subtle and did not come only from viewers. She recalled hearing that racist language was used in production meetings when models were not present. That alone would have made the workplace hostile, but the accusations went further, suggesting the culture was shaped from above rather than slipping in through the cracks. Claudia Jordan later described racially charged comments from producer Phil Wayne and said she was reduced to stereotypes both as a woman and as a black woman. Her account suggests that race and sexuality were weaponized together, making the humiliation feel targeted from every angle. Jordan also alleged that contestants were filtered through racist assumptions. She said stereotypes influenced who was chosen and claimed black contestants were sometimes tracked in ways white contestants were not. If true, that means the show's cheerful spontaneity was not as spontaneous as viewers believed. It was curated through a very ugly lens. The affair.
Everyone's talking about game show host Bob Barker's startling confession. He's come forward to admit that he and his lovely assistant Diane Parkinson shared months of romance. But now she's charging sexual harassment, and he's calling her a greedy opportunist.
The most talked about personal scandal involved model Diane Parkinson. According to several former colleagues, Barker had a long affair with her while also being in a relationship with Nancy Burnett. People on set allegedly noticed the closeness long before anything became public. Kathleen Bradley said Parkinson confided in her, and others described the romance as the worst-kept secret in the building. Hallstrom claimed that once everyone believed Parkinson might become the new Mrs. Barker, the power dynamic shifted overnight. People began treating her differently because they assumed she had influence. On a healthy set, a private relationship would not reorganize the behavior of an entire staff. Here, according to the women who were there, it did. Favor seemed tied to proximity, and proximity to Barker could change how others survived the day. The end of the affair brought even uglier accusations. Hallstrom said Barker reacted furiously after learning Parkinson had previously dated black men, and she described a silent set listening to an explosive argument. Whether every detail can be verified or not, the story fits the larger pattern former staff described: jealousy, racism, ego, and power colliding in plain view. The fallout.
A case of two middle-aged adults, consenting adults, having sex. It was as simple as that.
After Parkinson left the show, things only became more legal and more bitter. She filed a sexual harassment lawsuit, and according to Hallstrom, other women were pressured into supporting Barker's side. Hallstrom said she refused to give testimony she believed would be false. That refusal, she believed, cost her dearly. In 1995, she said she was pushed out under the claim that her weight had become a problem. Hallstrom insisted the weight gain came from prescribed steroid medication and that producers used it as cover when a more honest explanation would have exposed retaliation. Her account of what followed is one of the harshest in the story. She said she never got to say goodbye and later went public to deny that she had retired voluntarily. Then came Barker's defamation lawsuit, which she said drained her finances and isolated her from nearly everyone connected to the show. Hallstrom claimed she sold nearly everything and at one point lived out of her car to keep fighting. Barker eventually dropped his lawsuit shortly before trial, and Hallstrom later filed her own case. The money matters, but what lingers most is the human cost. She described battling not just one man, but a machine built to outlast anyone with fewer resources. No goodbye.
Yes, I did have a gag order because some of us were unjustifiably let go by Mr. Barker, which he won't admit to, but he did.
Hallstrom was not the only model who said she was discarded without dignity. Kathleen Bradley and Janice Pennington also sued after being fired in 2000. Bradley said the abruptness hurt almost as much as the dismissal itself, especially after years of service. What stands out in these accounts is the feeling that loyalty ran in one direction. The women gave the show glamour, familiarity, and continuity. They helped sell the dream. Yet, when conflicts deepened, several said they were treated as liabilities rather than longtime members of the program's identity. Bradley claimed multiple staffers were fired together because they refused to lie to protect Barker. That allegation turns a backstage feud into something larger. It suggests a culture where silence was rewarded and honesty could cost you your job. Now it's time to hear from you. After hearing what former models and staff said about the set, do these allegations completely change the way you see Bob Barker and The Price is Right? Or can you separate the show from what was happening behind the scenes? Let us know in the comments section below.